Well, remember Naomi Wolf, the celebrity feminist and social critic from the US? Remember her? How could you forget her? She was the author of that best-selling tome, The Beauty Myth. Well, in her latest literary incarnation, the perpetually controversial Ms. Wolf has been busy crisscrossing the US, calling for a citizens' revolt against what she calls the fascist shift in her George W. Bush-led country. Her radical views have led to an almost total media blackout of her book, apocalyptically entitled The End of America. Prior to her recent trip down under for the Perth Writers' Festival, we chatted via satellite from New York. Naomi, thanks for joining us. I'm wondering whether at the moment you're feeling just a little schizoid, because your book's been hailed on the one hand as the most valuable political book of the year, yet others have canned you and the book as righteous paranoia and the rantings of a wild extremist or even an unhinged lefty.
Right. Well, I pretty much haven't heard the latter criticism for most of the reception of the book here in the United States. Here in the United States, there's been pretty much a mainstream media blackout about the book. I haven't had a single print review. It's been much discussed on the internet and on radio, interestingly. So what I have heard is that people in the United States don't see this as paranoia at all, by and large. People in the United States across the political spectrum understand that we really are in a very fragile situation if the erosion of our checks and balances and the systemic assault on the rule of law continues.
The End of America, that's one hell of a title, if I could say. Is that an attention getter, or are you seriously suggesting that we're looking at the end of the United States as we know it?
Well, of course I'm serious. If what you're saying is, do I mean the landmass or the nation-state is going to disappear? Of course not. If by America we mean, for instance, the system of checks and balances that the founders put in place, it's gone already. Because I don't know if you've been following this in Australia, but Congress just passed a law, and the president isn't supposed to be a dictator in the United States, and the president told Congress, I'm just going to ignore 3 key aspects of this law that you passed.
But if somebody said, Naomi Wolf, whose work we have admired for so long, on this occasion, why shouldn't we just write her off as a serial sensationalist, a notoriety seeker, who's trying to scare the hell out of people because she needs another bestseller? Cynical as that.
Yeah, they're welcome to say whatever they like. I'm not making a rhetorical argument. I'm simply saying this is what you see would-be dictators have done since the end of the 20s in Europe. This is the blueprint that would-be dictators, the 10 steps would-be dictators on the left or right always follow. You know, you invoke a terrifying internal and external threat, you create secret prisons, you start to torture people, you create a surveillance apparatus right through the list.
Naomi, let's say for the sake of our discussion that you're right. Let's assume you're right. Your concerns about the erosion of freedom in America have been raised by others, probably not as sensationally as you have, but raised.
Excuse me, it's not sensational. Yeah.
Well, to some people it would be, I guess, is the point.
Okay.
But to take our discussion to the next level, let's assume that you're right. So what do we do about it? Are we talking about armed rebellion? Are we talking about taking to the streets? A citizens' revolt, a bloggers' revolt, or what?
Right. Well, what we've done is what the founders called on us to do. The founders counted on each of us, not a political class or a pundit class, to be the guardians of liberty. I co-founded with a number of other activists an organization called the American Freedom Campaign, which is exactly what history shows is necessary at a time like this. It's driving a grassroots democracy movement in the United States. We've now got 5 million members in partner organizations, and we're also driving a legislative agenda through Congress from restore habeas corpus to end torture, end warrantless wiretapping, protect journalists from being prosecuted under the Espionage Act, and we're also driving...
But you say that the time's running out. I'm wondering if it hasn't run out already, because the book's obviously predicated on the actions of the Bush government and its reaction to September the 11th, but you also write off a change in government in Washington. You don't really believe that Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama could make any difference, it seems.
Respectfully, I have to say you're really distorting what I said. What I said is that the founders knew that changing parties, as long as you release the constraints on the checks and balances that they put in place, is going to corrupt any leader, history shows, who has absolute power, the power to intimidate the opposition, to lock people up for 3 years in a Navy brig, which the president has said now any United States president has the right to do. for 3 years without being able to contact lawyers or see their families. It doesn't matter if a Democrat or a Republican is in office, if they inherit these powers, it's dangerous. History shows that. And I'd be delighted if a responsible executive was elected who restored the checks and balances and the restraints that the founders put in place.
Well, that's the case. If that's the case, who would you like to see in the White House?
Personally, I've become an Obama supporter because I think he's really harnessing this grassroots energy, this awakening that Americans are having, that, you know, everything they love about their country really is at stake, and that it's time to take back the country and stand up for liberty. But I really want to stress that the historical blueprint shows that the months leading up to an election in a closing society can be very dangerous.
What I'd like to ask about is the reaction from your supporters. I mean, given the success of the beauty myth, wouldn't your audience find it strange that Naomi Wolf, of all people, is not supporting Hillary Clinton?
You know, they can say whatever they like. I mean, like every American, you know, I'm watching this election, I'm watching the candidates, you know, present their case, and there's a long time between now and November. But what I'm really worried about is having a transparent election, an accountable election for whoever the front runner is. I think that there are great risks and threats right now to the prospect of a full, free election unless the American people rise up and insist, for instance, as they did in California, on accountability, getting rid of the debold machines, the corrupted electronic machines.
Naomi, I have to admit, I'm still a bit confused about how this rising up that you call it is done. I mean, what do you mean by rising up?
By rising up in terms of the election,
right.
There are many groups that are becoming very powerful right now that are focused on scrutinizing the vote and throwing out the voting machines that are corrupted, that have been corrupted by major donors to the Republicans, for example. So that's the kind of citizen activism, scrutiny of the election, attention, you know, calling representatives' attention to the election process, and also awareness on the part of Americans that in a closing society, things like the purging of the U.S. attorneys, which the White House has deleted 10,000 emails so that Congress can't scrutinize that potential scandal. That's the kind of thing in a closing society every despot does. Goebbels purged the attorneys and the lawyers in April of 1933 so that they could continue to have elections, to have a judiciary, but they knew that the outcome was always going to be in their favor. Despots are always doing that. Putin's doing that. In Pakistan, they tried to do that.
Did you really feel it was necessary to liken the current American leadership on either side to people like Mussolini and Stalin and Hitler?
I'm not saying rhetorically Bush is like Mussolini, Bush is like Hitler. If you look at the early years of how Mussolini came to power in a pluralistic, representative parliamentary democracy, how Hitler came to power in a pluralistic, representative parliamentary democracy, they used certain tactics systematically to subvert the rule of law and to dismantle the Constitution. And what I'm doing is laying those tactics side by side with very similar tactics that we're seeing right now and asking readers to draw their own conclusions about whether this
But you say you can't get reviewed in America. Your book's not getting reviewed. You feel as though you're blacklisted and targeted. Do you think people are saying, she's got a point here, but maybe she's gone too far?
Well, not in my own country, I have to say. It seems like a very faraway conversation in a way.
But no reviews. Nobody wants to review the book, from what you're saying.
No reviews whatsoever.
Well, why is that then?
That's right.
Well, why is that?
I'll get to that in a minute. But wherever I go, I'm speaking to packed audiences that I've never spoken to before, of people across the political spectrum who are aware as Americans that there are very disturbing things happening. And frankly, since it's my own country that has to restore democracy and the rule of law, I really don't care if critics, you know, far away who aren't experiencing these threats and these dangers think that there is a rhetorical problem. Again, people who have read the book don't think there's a rhetorical problem.
I don't think raising these points of conjecture is suggesting that we don't think you should be listened to.
Well, let me stress, thank you. Let me stress that the call of warning I'm making isn't just about the United States, it's international. And the international community doesn't want an America unconstrained by the rule of law at home. It doesn't serve anyone.
Whatever else, you've certainly got everyone's attention. Good to talk to you.
You too. Thank you.
Naomi Wolf loves to chat. If you felt a comment coming on in response to her toey take on present-day America, check out our website where you can have your say.